This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the July monthly partnership meeting of SCDRP, the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership. My name is Heather McCarthy, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of SCDRP. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Please type your name, affiliation, and location into the chat box. The chat box serves as a record of attendance and also just kind of allows the rest of us to say a virtual hello and build connections with each other. So here's the agenda for today's meeting. First, there's a lot going on with SCDRP. The planning has begun for the SCDRP 2024 annual meeting. We have an exciting SCDRP staff update. And the bulk of our meeting today, about 30 to 35 minutes, we will be hearing about tribal climate adaptation priorities and opportunities in the Southeast with today's super speakers from the Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center and the United South and Eastern Tribes. Next, we will look ahead at upcoming opportunities for members, including the launching of new SCDRP exclusive member-only benefits. I will highlight several open funding opportunities and share how SCDRP is poised to help with proposed projects with a quick overview of our capabilities statement. And lastly, I would like to hear your feedback on an SCDRP mentorship program. And lastly, we will round out today with partner sharing. So please get ready your announcements and resources. I am so excited to announce the SCDRP 2024 annual meeting will be held in Savannah, Georgia. We have proposed Savannah, Georgia for several reasons. We move around from year to year to make meeting attendance easier and less costly for nearby groups. We have two local SCDRP advisory board members. They and their colleagues are very excited to help out with the planning and logistics. And Savannah is a lovely historic city with spectacular natural areas all around. And flights from via Atlanta, flights provide fairly easy access for our Caribbean partners. We will also be able to leverage many local experts and numerous universities nearby to help us arrange meaningful and substantive field trips. I will not be advertising the exact dates location until the hotel contract is signed, but I can say that we are currently reviewing a contract, we have it in hand, with the DeSoto Savannah Hotel for 2 full days of meeting on Tuesday, January 23rd through Wednesday, January 24th. Do you have an interest in helping formulate the content and composition of our annual meeting? I am looking for 16 members to help develop the content, invite speakers, and organize field trips. So if you are a current SCDRP member with dues up to date, you are eligible to join committees. The 2024 Annual Meeting Steering Committee is considered a short-term ad hoc committee. The time commitments will be discrete. 1 hour virtual meetings every 2 weeks from August through the meeting at the end of January. That's it. The annual meeting steering committee is a pathway to bring attention to relevant issues and projects that are important to you and your organization. But it's also just a great way to interact and get to know other SCDRP members. I gotta say, it's kind of fun too. The committee will be a multi-sectoral group of resilience professionals, and we want folks from every sector, private companies, academia, all levels of government, and nonprofits throughout the Southeast and the Caribbean. So we want this committee to be very diverse geographically and sectorally. So the folks you see on the screen um, um, are folks that have already come forward. So I'm very excited. We're starting to form the steering committee. Please let me know if you would like to be an integral part of our upcoming meeting in Savannah. Email us at scdrp@socorro.org. We would love to have you join us on the 2024 Annual Meeting Steering Committee. Next, an important staff update. Congratulations to our new SCDRP program coordinator, Emily Noakes. Please wave, Emily. I am sure you recognize her. Emily has been serving as our temporary summer communications specialist, and we are excited that she has accepted our offer to expand her duties to include programmatic tasks as our next SCDRP program coordinator. Emily, welcome on board. We are a small but mighty team. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today's super speakers, Katherine Smith and Steph Courtney. Dr. Katherine Smith is the director of the Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center, or CCAST, one of the 9 regional centers that form the National and Regional Climate Adaptation Science Center network. Katherine works with university and federal scientists to provide applied, actionable science that helps stewards of fish, wildlife, and ecosystems strategically adapt to changing conditions. Katherine brings 13 years of experience leading national and regional federal science programs. Prior to joining the Climate Adaptation Science Centers, Katherine served as the Assistant Station Director of the U.S. Forest Service Pacific Northwest Research Station, where she provided research program direction and developed interdisciplinary research initiatives to inform land management and climate adaptation strategies. She has also worked with stakeholders and scientists to develop national research programs and agendas, including the USFS Fish and Wildlife Strategic Program Area and the NOAA Habitat Assessment Improvement Plan. Katherine received her PhD in ecology from the University of Georgia, her MS in fisheries and wildlife management at Michigan State University, and her BS in economics and ecology at Tulane University. She began her federal career with NOAA as a Knaus Fellow in 2007 and was selected for the U.S. Forest Service Senior Leader Program in 2013. Please note that Katherine will slip out after her presentation today. She has another obligation at exactly 10:30. Our second super speaker today is Dr. Steph Courtney. Steph is the Assistant Climate Science Liaison for the United South and Eastern Tribes, or USET, Tribal Climate Resilience Program Team. Steph serves as the technical expert on climate change issues, resource vulnerability, and climate adaptation actions to tribal nations in the USET region, and more broadly in the combined region comprising the Department of Interior's Southeast CAST and Northeast CAST. Steph is responsible for developing and implementing a communication, education, and outreach programs, identifying climate research needs and priorities, and providing climate adaptation planning support to tribal nations. And we are so pleased to have both of you here today. So it is my pleasure to present first Katherine and then Steph. And I will stop sharing. And first up, Katherine.
Hey, thank you so much. Let me just share my screen here. One moment.
Okay,
All right. Oh, I forgot to hit the share button. Here we go.
there it goes. Looks good.
All right. Great. So everybody can see my slides. And thank you so much for the invitation to present today. And I'm, again, very sorry I can't stay for the entire session, but Steph knows the CASC incredibly well. She was a Global Change Fellow with us before taking a permanent position with USET. So she will be able to answer all your questions and is happy to follow up with me if there's anything that that you have for me after the presentation. But I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center, the CCASC, and talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done with tribes and some of the science priorities that we have looking ahead. And then Steph will provide a lot more detail on tribal science, or how to partner with tribes in the Southeast, some of the priorities. There'll be a lot more specifics in her presentation. So, let's see. Apologies, it's giving me a little grief about advancing. There we go. So the mission of the Climate Adaptation Science Centers is to develop science or develop and deliver science to help fish, wildlife, water, land, and people adapt to a changing climate. So we look at how climate and associated risks are projected to change over time, how those changes are likely to affect ecosystems and cultural resources. And we're really focusing more and more on how we can help management agencies develop and evaluate adaptation strategies. Sorry. Okay, having a little slide advancing challenge here. So I just wanted to go into the mission a little bit more. We really focus on actionable science, science that managers can use in the near and long term. And since we're USGS, we're a science organization, we're known for developing science, but because we have a very unique model, which I'll talk about in a minute, we're able to do a lot more than just produce science. We have a global change fellows, and we have a lot of different fellowship programs nationally and regionally that support developing the next generation of climate scientists. And we'll be expanding that work with USET. I can talk about that more in a little bit. We're also increasingly focusing on increasing accessibility of existing science and information. We work closely with managers, and that's a common theme over the past 5 to 10 years is there's so much information, how do we use it? So synthesis, delivery, visualization, those are all emphasis areas in the future. We do a lot of work with our university consortium. It really helps us to go beyond science and actually build communities of practice, host science symposiums, host other large science working groups, but really connect the science to the community that uses the science. And last and absolutely not least is fostering equity and inclusion. We're increasingly working to reach historically underrepresented communities and students and scientists, and really working to connect and better serve our tribal partners and tribal nations. And again, we're part of a national network, and so we're able to really learn from CASC networks across the country. We're also able to tap into national initiatives like Future of Fire, Future of Water. So we have national themes and postdoc cohorts, and we're able to be part of that, but we're also able to really try to scale our work from local to national. And I mentioned earlier that we have a fairly unique model. We're a federal tribal university partnership. And the university part is we have a 5-year consortium agreement that we compete. So every 5 years, universities around the Southeast and actually state and tribal partners can be part of our consortium. So we evaluate proposals to host our university consortium. And also every five years, the Bureau of Indian Affairs competes a tribal liaison role, and USET has been our tribal liaison for 8 years, United South and Eastern Tribes. And so through this federal university consortium model, we're able to work with our tribal climate resilience liaison to connect tribal priorities to our funding opportunities and really all the work we do. And then through our university consortium, we're able to train students, do additional capacity building, science symposium, seminar series, newsletters, just a lot of things that are challenging for the federal government to do alone. And we're also able to tap into a lot of different skill sets that we don't have in USGS, like social science, economics, next generation computing ability. And then on the USGS side, we have a small federal staff, but we work with an advisory committee of federal, state, and tribal partners to set our short and long-term science priorities. And we do a lot of synthesis and strategic planning to make our science more accessible. Our current consortium is pictured here, and our footprint, since every federal agency has a different definition of the Southeast. But we are in the process of reawarding our next 5-year consortium, and we'll have new consortium members in Arkansas, University of Arkansas, Savannah State University, um, the University of Puerto Rico, and University of the Virgin Islands. So we'll have much more equitable regional coverage. And we also are super excited to have USET formally joining our consortium as a member, which means we'll be able to directly fund tribes and tribal research and tribal-led research. Our current model, we're allowed to fund USGS scientists and consortium members without competition. So this will allow us to directly reach tribes in the USET network. So we're really excited about that. And then just a quick, around the CASC network, we've partnered extensively with tribes, states, state natural resource agencies, federal, Department of Interior agencies, and tribal nations are our three primary partners and collaborators. So we funded over 51 partners with tribes projects with tribes since 2008. And we've got more than 12 tribal liaisons now placed around the country. In the Southeast, we only last year, were able to have a dedicated tribal liaison with Steph Courtney. So we have a few projects, but most of the work has been done in the Midwest and Western states, and we're really actively working to increase our partnerships and our projects that directly serve tribes. I've listed a couple examples of the type of work that we do around the country with tribes, and then some of the projects that we've done recently in the past with tribes. For example, a climate resiliency vulnerability assessment for cultural resources with the Seminole Tribe of Florida, with their Historic Preservation Office. And then last year, we also partnered with the Native American Fish and Wildlife Society with their annual conference that was held in Florida, and held a workshop on application of climate models for fish and wildlife adaptation decisions. So that's just to give you a little flavor of some of the work that we've funded. And then more broadly, we fund work through our annual RFP. And this is some examples of some of the projects that we've funded through our RFP, ranging from direct evaluation of dam operations to mitigate effects of climate change, to incorporating sea level rise scenarios and Everglades restoration planning. We have struggled. We did a portfolio analysis looking at the equity and program delivery, and we already knew that we struggled in a lot of areas. For example, the US Caribbean, inland areas of Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas. We had some very underfunded regions, and our work with tribes was absolutely underfunded. So that's why we're really working to have more equitable program delivery. We've struggled to do that through our RFP. We haven't funded any tribal projects through our RFP, so we're looking at how we run our competitive funding opportunity, but we're also doing more directed projects to directly meet needs of tribes. And so here are the examples of the directed projects we funded in 2022 and 2023. And you can see that these are targeted towards some of those underfunded regions. And one of those was working with the Eastern Band of Cherokee to do a kind of multi-generation, very long-term climate adaptation planning framework. We also brought on a visiting scholar Marie Schaefer, to specifically focus on tribal adaptation strategies and connecting with tribes in the Southeast. And Steph will talk a little bit more about some of the work that she's doing with tribes to better capture their climate adaptation science priorities and help us incorporate those in our future funding decisions. And our FY24 funding opportunity just closed, and we're in the process of evaluating all the proposals. But just to give you a sense of the type of work that we funded or that we're prioritizing, we had 3 priorities. The first of those was evaluating the ecological and socioeconomic effectiveness of climate adaptation actions. So we're really looking at science to help managers inform adaptation strategies and understand effectiveness of adaptation strategies that are on the ground. And our advisory committee really stressed that considering variables like public acceptability of the different adaptation strategies was very important. So that's why we stress the socioeconomic component. And to the part I mentioned earlier, our second priority really stressed the accessibility of existing information. And I've highlighted in blue that we did stress US Caribbean and tribal nations. And one of the themes that we've heard is data gaps and sort of data inequities, both for tribal nations in the Southeast in particular, but also other regions like the US Caribbean, where federal programs may not have not served those regions and tribal nations as well. That's maybe a longer story. And then the third was stressing these priority research areas, ecosystems, and geographic areas that we identified in our portfolio analysis as being underfunded or underserved. So tribal nations was first and foremost in those. And some of the themes that had been identified to date were understanding flood and drought risk and focusing on land use changes that will affect resiliency of tribal lands and water resources. So again, I think Steph can answer questions about these, or I'm happy to connect. I can put my email in the chat and be happy to connect on any of these priorities after the webinar. And let me advance to my last slide. Okay, and in terms of collaboration opportunities, as I mentioned, we have a wonderful newsletter, seminar series that, if you're looking to learn more about the projects we fund or engage with us, those are great opportunities. We also have our annual project solicitation or funding opportunity that's open to consortium members and USGS scientists. But you can partner with any of our consortium members or scientists to compete in that project or that RFP. In terms of connecting with tribes, probably the best opportunity is our biannual science symposium that we also hold in a different part of the Southeast every year. Our last one was in Gulf Shores last year, and our next one, we're just starting the planning process, so to be announced. But we have wonderful tribal attendance at that symposium, so it's a great place to connect with tribal partners, and it's about 50% scientists and managers. Okay, and also we're working to connect.
Is Catherine still Catherine still there? I can't hear her.
I think we lost her just at the end.
Okay. All right. Well, I know she had to zip out anyway. Let's go ahead and we will, let's see if I can make you a presenter, Steph, and we'll transfer on over to you. Oops.
Sounds good. That's
Okay.
a brief goodbye. If anybody else wants to say a more formal goodbye, I'll pass that on later.
I know. And we will grab her email, and you'll be able to ask questions directly to Catherine through email. And here we are. I will turn it over to Steph now. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. I see Catherine is kind of back in buffering, but she'll see what we got going on. Yeah, so I want to sort of follow up on that. I'm both zooming out and then going to sort of zoom in from what Catherine was talking about. So we work together at the CASC. I am one of the 2 liaisons working with the Southeast CASC, but we work with the Southeast and Northeast, so kind of jumping between. And I did my PhD at Auburn University, so I at least lived in the Southeast for 5 years, even though I'm now not down there with y'all. Maybe I'll go back someday. We'll see. Time will tell. So I first just want to talk about terminology a little bit because, certainly Catherine was talking about tribal nations, and just if that sort of term or way of talking about those nations is different for any folks, I just want to make that super clear and easy. That, yeah, we refer to them often as tribal nations, and that's kind of a regional thing. You know, you could say indigenous nations, native nations, First Nations, but just regionally, we tend to go with the term tribal nations. And they are sovereign governments within U.S. borders. This is a long-standing, legally established thing, at least in our work, because we're mostly talking about working on, you know, environmental protection and to some degree policy and resource management. That means that we're almost always working with governments specifically. So working with those nations as governments. So there are communities and, you know, organizations, nonprofits, whatever, that also might be within or across nations, just of, you know, indigenous environmental organizations in general. But that, you know, those are separate groups that you'd be working with. Pretty much all of this you can easily analogize to being citizens of anywhere else. You know, just because someone's collaborating with me or even a nonprofit that I'm a part of, it doesn't mean that they're collaborating with the state of Minnesota. You know, that is a distinct and different kind of collaboration. So just being really thoughtful about those differences. But often we are in the environmental protection space working with the governments, because that's who's charged with that. And also slide advancement, there we go. So all of the federally recognized nations, which we'll talk about a little bit more too, the U.S. government has trust and treaty obligations too. These are legal agreements that were initially through treaties with individual nations, and then over time the policy shifted and the federal government made it more just, okay, you know, nations at large that we recognize as these sovereign indigenous nations. We have this relationship with all of you now. So they were mostly, you know, established in exchange for lands. Obviously, that's a huge part of how, you know, all the U.S. existing at all and our entire economy. And so this is not, you know, to any means a fair exchange for these lands still, but there were legal agreements made in exchange for some of these lands. So a lot of these agreements and services are carried out by the native specific agencies of the federal government, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Indian Education, Indian Health Service, all those. But technically speaking, all departments and agencies, all branches of the federal government have these trust and treaty obligations. But not all federal employees know that. And, you know, not everyone here is a federal employee either, I know that. But that's just something that we point out, is that this is a big part of all federal employees' responsibilities to some degree. And this is a capacity building and awareness thing that even the government, after hundreds of years of doing this, has not fulfilled quite yet. So a lot of the times we talk about that as consultation. That is maybe the form that folks are most aware with, that any decision that the federal government makes that has a possibility of affecting tribal nation lands, holding resources, needs to have a consultation process. But, you know, that's kind of just the first step, the one really explicitly laid out. Really, there's a lot more to this whole body of history and law about the full nation-to-nation relationships, and those show up in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of the big nitty-gritty overview of, again, this is a summary of hundreds of years of court cases and laws and treaties and all sorts of things. But that's the quick overview of it. So my organization, that the names come up here a few times, United South and Eastern Tribes, is a nonprofit that is formed up of membership from federally recognized tribes across the East here. So in the Southeast, this actually ends up being a map of all of the federally recognized tribal nations, because they all are members of my organization. Whereas in the Northeast, there's a few that have elected not to be members, so just FYI. Except Nashville, this little dot is our office, so that's not a nation. Just keep that in mind. But all the rest of these are all of the federally recognized nations in the Southeast. We are up to 33 nations now, from starting out with 4 members in 1969. And the newest members have been joining as they've gotten federal recognition, as they've applied for and been granted this status by the federal government, and then have access to a bunch of new resources and systems and legal agreements, and then join us. And the program areas that we cover are environmental resource management, so that's where me and the rest of our climate change team lie. And then we also have a really big health program support department and a small but growing economic development department. But there's also a whole side of our organization that is made up of leaders from the member nations. So our board of directors is made up of 2 leaders of each member nation. And then we have a bunch of committees that are made up of staff and elected leaders across different sectors of tribal government. So this little graphic I've stolen to kind of sum this up. I mean, really, it's just a graphic of the topics that pretty much all governments cover and address, but it's also true of most tribal nation governments. And, this definitely varies widely. Some of these nations, like 7-ish of our member nations, only were given federal recognition in 2017. So they're really still just building up these programs. Their entire natural resources, land, agriculture, environment departments might be 2 people. And that is, that's hard. There's a lot still in development there. But we still work with, trying to diversify what departments we work with, trying to help those nations in their efforts to address climate change across these departments and agencies. I think that's very relatable, that we're all trying to cross those silos and make broader connections because we know that they're there, that climate change will affect them all. So we officially work with many of these departments. And then, of course, there's also big efforts and climate change impacts and work happening in other organizations and communities beyond the government. So I just want to keep acknowledging that, even though my organization is very much from the government point of view, because that's who we work with, that's who we're made up of. But the other tribal liaisons, just to serve as an example, and this is, again, about a nationwide system, so it's not as applicable to everybody here, but in other regions, so, we with USET are, like I said, specifically working with those tribal governments, but the other tribal liaisons in the other Climate Adaptation Science Centers work with all different kinds of organizations and hosts. So 2 of them are with AHEC, that's the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, and the College of Menominee Nation, so tribal colleges and universities. There's other environmental focused nonprofits like the Great Plains Tribal Water Alliance and the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians and the Native American Fish and Wildlife Society. I've gotten real good at acronyms. And then 2 of them also just have their liaisons hosted at the universities, the large public universities that are the consortium hosts in Oklahoma and Alaska. So all of these really do affect how we do our work, who we connect with, because we are employees of our tribal organization, even if all of us are kind of in this shared context of working with the USGS, working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. There's a lot of context here. So that's just another part to think about if you're thinking about partnering with any liaison to the tribal nations or individual actors within a tribal nation or citizens or staff. Those collaborations are going to look different because we have different priorities and positioning. So in the Southeast specifically, to zoom in, we have by far the largest concentration of state-recognized tribes. So these nations who do not have federal recognition, but sometimes they are recognized by their states, or, certainly there are tribal communities and, probably nations, but no U.S. power has recognized them as such. Doesn't mean that they're any less sovereign or any less of a nation, but they don't have any kind of legal standing or status. So, and this is really this isn't a coincidence that we're the only red and orange ones over here in the East. This is because of the earliest European contact, the earliest colonizers, especially inland, we're around the Southeast. So we had the earliest, genocide and just total decimation of populations from disease. So this is why essentially there is a lot smaller groups out here. It's harder for them to become federally recognized. You have to prove through written documents continuous existence and separate culture since contact. So when that reaches 500 years, yes, that's even more difficult. So especially I see a lot of folks in North Carolina here, so y'all know plenty well North Carolina has lots of state recognized tribes, and multiple of them have had federal recognition applications in for decades. And it's just a really long, difficult process, but federal recognition opens up all these other resources and systems of support. So it's definitely a goal, and it's ongoing. And of course, also, after first contact, then there was also the most sort of deliberate and intentional removal of nations from this area. So that's kind of how we end up with even a couple of gray states with no recognized groups. And it changes our larger systems here, that we have no tribally controlled colleges or universities, TCUs, in our region yet. We always, stay hopeful that could change. But there are, especially in North Carolina, UNC systems that are really good at having American Indian programs and support structures and pretty good populations. So that's, happening across the region, efforts across the region. So just a very quick couple of things that my program does to support these activities. I've only been with my organization for a little short of a year now. So some of these, like these pictures, are from before I was around, but, share them nonetheless, is really just serving as technical support however we can to assist these nations in their journeys to deal with and plan for and implement climate change adaptation. So two of the really big activities historically have been our week-long climate resilience camps, which is really kind of a workshop setting, but keep it in a very, outdoorsy, natural setting, keep connected with that aspect of it, and writing retreats. And so most of the nations in our region at this point are working on the early planning stages. Many of them start with a vulnerability assessment report and sort of big analysis, and then we'll move on to an adaptation plan built based on that vulnerability assessment. That's definitely not everyone, but that's just an example of a flow that folks often take for a really systematic way of looking at their nation and climate change and what they're needing to be doing about it. So that is a lot of our programmatic stuff, but also, of course, just one-off, reviewing reports as people see fit. If people are asked about information on a specific topic, or, I stay aware of all the data tools as well as I can, and all kinds of technical support, however that comes up. We also had a lovely webinar series, which can be accessed on YouTube, which is so just little episodes that had these virtual site visits, which were really beautifully shot and edited by a native filmmaker who traveled to these 4 different member nations to document some of this awesome work. So in the Southeast, we have the Alabama tribe of Texas, who has a huge longleaf pine and prescribed fire program going on. That's beautiful. And then a visit with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina, working on their seed saving program. So just a little plug. These are some of our member nations. There's amazing things happening, and you can watch these little videos about them too if you're curious what's going on. Oh, now I'm having the same issues. Okay. Slowly but surely. So just a couple brief of these little successes. Oh, my computer is sad. Hopefully it's not affecting my presentation too much. Sorry if it is. So the Seminole Tribe of Florida we like to highlight because they have just a big dedicated program. They were really intentional on putting their heritage and environmental resources all together in one office that works together. So that is, again, breaking down those silos. Realistically, for Native nations, the cultural resources are environmental. So sorry, my computer's sad. Anyway, so that's a really big office that they have with specific climate change staff and projects ongoing. And there are nations that are completing this step as I've laid out with the vulnerability assessments and adaptation plans. None of them are fully public yet, So I'm staying broad about that. But hopefully we'll be able to sort of announce and share those in the future. I'm going to try turning off my camera, see if that helps. Ooh, tricky.
There you go.
There's some to get land back, some reclaimed land, specifically from these really new. We're back.
I can hear you, Steph.
Tricky technology.
It is.
Okay. Yeah, my camera's working on turning off, so hopefully that is helping.
Okay.
Great. Okay, and then.
Do we lose Steph? I think we might have. Let's see. I think we lost Steph. There must be some kind of built-in timer or something. Steph, please come back if you can. Emily, are you still there? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're still there, Heather.
Okay, good. All right. Steph, are you back? I see she came back, but I can't
Hard
hear.
for these nations in their efforts. So I just wanted to highlight that, the challenges we can all guess because we all share them across the region. But, the advancement. Now I get what Katherine was saying.
It won't advance
There we go.
past the.
But I do want to highlight a few areas that we've heard as challenges, essentially, or just areas where we need more information.
I think I lost Steph again. Having some internet trouble today. Steph, can you hear me? Nope. All right. Perhaps in the interest of time, I might go ahead and move to my slides. And hopefully she'll come back and I can pop over to some questions. Steph, let me know if if you can hear me and you come back. Amanda Guthrie, I see you. Can you see and hear my slides? Okay. All right. I'll keep charging forward. I'm sorry we lost our speaker, Steph, but I think she was approaching probably the end of her presentation, and we will come back to her if she returns. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead just because time is ticking, and I'm going to show you a few more upcoming SCDRP happenings. So over the next few months, we will be launching member-only access to exclusive SCDRP resources, databases, and tools. And the first of our exclusive member benefits is the SCDRP membership directory. The SCDRP online membership directory allows you to view your membership status, update your contact information, renew or upgrade your membership, and access a wide variety of member-only features. So in order to be a part of the SCDRP membership directory or to view and search the SCDRP membership directory, you must log in to your personal account portal through the SCDRP website or click this link from our newsletters. If you have never logged in before, you will first click on the Create an Account link. You'll enter in all of your contact information and click Submit. You can upload a photo if you like, and you can update that photo at any time. If you switch jobs, you can easily log back in, update your contact info yourself. So once you have a member account portal, you will be able to sign in anytime using your email and your newly created password. And when you log in, you will land on this page known as the dashboard. And from your dashboard, you can edit your profile, check, upgrade, or renew your SCDRP membership, make a donation, and access the exclusive member-only resources. So down that left side there, you will see more and more resources over time. So through your account portal, you can double-click or edit what information is being listed in the membership directory by click on that membership directory profile from the left-hand menu. From here, you can opt in or you can opt out on whether you would like to appear in the membership directory and if you would like to include your photo in the directory. And you can also choose what information to show or what information to hide in your membership directory profile. So through your account portal is where you can access the SCDRP online member directory. See, it's right there in the left menu. So let's take a look. Here is what the new SCDRP membership directory looks like. You can see that there's a little business card is displayed for each of us, and when you add your photo, it'll pop up just like mine. So the default here is that it displays your first and last names, company name, your city, your state, your email address, and that's it. You can choose to display more information like your phone number if you want to. The SCDRP membership directory is fully searchable, and you can quick search by name. The directory can also be sorted by a variety of factors too. So here comes what I think is the most useful tool of the whole thing, the advanced search, and let me show you how it works. After you click on that upper right corner, advanced search, you'll be able to search the directory by first name, like what was the last name of that Sarah that I met at lunch? Last name, state or territory, like who else works in Puerto Rico? You can search by company. What members of SCDRP work at Miami-Dade County? You can also search by sector, like who else here works at a nonprofit? So here's a quick demo to answer the question, who do we have in SCDRP that works at NOAA? So you would type NOAA into the company name, click enter, and boom, here they are. We have 5 SCDRP members who work at NOAA: Roger, Lindy, Arantasu, Kayla, and Jamie. So I encourage you, please create your member account and log in at your earliest convenience. Update your contact info and utilize having access to this new SCDRP membership directory. The membership directory will help us find each other to enhance regional connections and collaborations. Speaking of regional collaborations, there are a number of exciting open funding opportunities right now. Please stay up to date by signing up for the SCDRP weekly bulletins and monthly newsletters and by following SCDRP on Twitter and LinkedIn. So looking ahead, with guidance from the SCDRP Development Committee and Advisory Board, we have produced a new SCDRP capabilities statement to better explain who we are to new partners, to outline what we do, and to also share what we want to do. And these are those new ways that SCDRP wants to support the communities in our region and the professionals that serve those communities. So SCDRP staff is here, ready to collaborate on projects, provide engagement, outreach, and knowledge transfer services, find potential local partners, and assist with letters of intent or letters of support. Please email us if you would like to know more or to receive a copy of our capabilities statement. So before we get to partner sharing, one last item. Our partnership committee has been discussing the implementation of an SCDRP mentorship program. So what do you think about this? SCDRP is committed to helping develop the next generation of resilience and recovery professionals. And I'm often approached by undergrads, graduate students, young professionals, and they come to SCDRP. They want to be more involved. They want to meet people, grow their network, explore career options and directions, and just kind of generally figure out how they can contribute the most to make this world a safer place for all. And in fact, just recently during our round of interviews for the program coordinator position, we heard one interviewer say, I just really want a mentor. I've never ever had a chance to have a mentor. And we would especially like to give young professionals from small islands, from small towns, rural areas, a chance to connect with a mentor. There's so many of you. I'm looking at your names right now, and you have so much to offer. I just want to gauge very quickly what the partnership's general interest is in a mentorship program. No commitments required today. So please use the React button in the lower left corner. If you think you might want to explore being a mentor, hit thumbs up. If you think you might like to explore being a mentee, please click the heart. And Emily, let's try to get a quick count, and we will report back to the partnership committee. Thank you for that. We have a little bit of time for some partner sharing. And I just want you to take a minute and look at this current list of who we are and the affiliations of SCDRP members. We have so much to share with each other. And I'm looking at, we're almost approaching the hour. I'll ask that if you have some updates, please type them into the chat. Emily has been doing an awesome job putting together a weekly bulletin. So we've been getting so many resources from you all that we can't cram them all into a monthly newsletter anymore. They need to come more often. The deadlines are approaching too quickly, or the webinars are over too quickly. So we're doing a weekly bulletin. It's coming out generally every Wednesday. So please send us updates, and we will organize and add them to either the weekly bulletin or the monthly newsletter. So please type into the chat. Also, if you have time later, any additional resources or updates from your organization's work or research, email them to us at scdrp@socorro.org. And at the very end of the meeting today, we will download the chat box and we will share your resources in the next newsletter. So this concludes our July monthly partnership meeting. I would like to add Katherine and Steph's email addresses into the chat box. Emily, if you can grab those from email. And I'm sorry we didn't get to questions with them. We seem to be having a little bit of internet trouble this today, but we can certainly email our questions to them. So a very special thank you to both of our super speakers, Dr. Katherine Smith and Steph Courtney. I learned a great deal today, and a sincere thank you to you for joining us today and your continued contributions to the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership. We look forward to seeing you all again on August 24th. Thanks again, and have a great day.